All right, I think we can get started. Was just wondering if Mauricio is here.
I think Mauricio made a comment that he could not join.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. Um, Anybody else that was co-leading this topic?
That would be me.
Okay. Yeah, JP, we can get started.
Yes. So, I mean, for me, I started working on post quantum cryptography for over a year now. It's a concerning topic because that you believe or don't believe that we are at risk. The regulation on one hand and our customer on the other hand are asking to have at least a roadmap toward supporting post-quantum cryptography in products. And I already see some regulation in the US that if you don't have quantum safe cryptography in 2027, then the product cannot be procured. So the risk for OpenStack is kind of a regulatory risk that at some point, then if we don't have that baked into OpenStack, then OpenStack might not be potential solution. And the other part of the regulation is you already have large deployment on critical infrastructures, and those one are the telco banks will face I think the first regulations around that. So we started as Red Hat to assess all the OpenStack repository where Red Hat is active. We will definitely contribute in everywhere that we can regarding what needs to be done in given projects. So we contribute upstream and fix the problem for everybody. Then that being said, I know there are some projects that we are not active, so we will ask the community to work. One of the major irritant is going to be the replacement of Paramigo. That has been, a side problem for quite some time. Julia, you want to say something?
I'll let you finish, and then I'll jump in.
Okay, so the replacement of Paramico is going to be something that pretty much needs to happen now for the project that are using it. And otherwise, we'll use a lot of Python cryptography. I think this is getting better. We should have quantum safe support in Python. Some is already merged, depending on your provider. We're using OpenSSL at Red Hat. We should have that support in a couple of months. I'm not too worried about Python cryptography, but there's still that entire cryptographic module analysis. And in the document that I created at the last PTG, there was a lot of identified cryptographic modules in the code, some of which might no longer be used, but it's still present in the code. So we have some kind of clean up and decide do we need so many different cryptographic modules, because historically speaking, at some point some people decided to use something that did the job, but now it's kind of a question of the less cryptographic module we have, then the easier it is to have cryptographic availability. I'm also expecting that the first quantum safe algorithm that we're implementing today, MLKM, MLDSA, will be good, but maybe 3 years from now, we're asked to replace them with others. So the fact that we can also easily replace cryptographic modules in the platform without that being a major endeavor that we are going to do now is also one of the objectives.
So
Julia.
I guess I'll jump in if you're ready for me to go. Okay, I'm finding this effort very frustrating. I'm just going to put that out there. And the reason I'm finding it frustrating is because it has become yet another boil the ocean effort. I'd much rather there to be concrete building blocks that or objectives projects can be taking on that help frame the vectors we want to secure first. And honestly, I think we're losing a lot of people when we talk about, well, we need now to eradicate Paramiko. The reality is, especially as we cross boundaries, is aside from Tempest itself, Paramiko is used under the hood. That means the risk is inside someone's data center, inside someone's infrastructure, where it is very far removed from the user or the security risks that exist from user interaction with an infrastructure. And so that's just a sign that we have chosen to boil the ocean, that we're hyper focusing on that. And frankly, we don't have the resources to boil the ocean. Now, that being said, if we can reach consensus, everything should default to at least TLS 1.2, lean hard towards 1.3. Cool. People are still going to have things that they need to be able to connect to that support only TLS 1.1. That's just operational reality, and we have to bridge that. We can't take an extreme, and frankly, we have to have that dialogue of what are the small building blocks we can build up to, not the please do a bunch of analysis approach that's been taken, and please change all your algorithms this way, because that's not that is breaking huge shift. That is not small building block, and I don't think it necessarily really brings customer value when we're hyper focusing on the inside, not the outside.
I think if I may, the entry level we need is to support quantum safe key encapsulation in the platform, because the major risk that is identified is traffic that is stored now to be decrypted later.
Okay,
that would be
the
low level
vectors, not just it broadly, because if we're talking about the vectors of communication that are used, then we can start to actually reach actionable work for projects to understand the framing. That's where this is all going sideways.
Okay, let's take the next person. Doug says it was Gibby. Don't know if you lowered your hand.
I don't have my hand up.
Okay.
Sorry.
Must have been from the previous thing. All right, G-Man.
Yeah. So my question is mainly like the scope, what we are considering in OpenStack, and I think that's what Julie also touched base some. So there are two ways for PQC thing. One is we make it a quantum. We OpenStack support the quantum safe thing along with whatever we are supporting non-quantum safe, right?
Yeah.
The RSA and all. If that is the only scope, then it seems fine. But if the scope or the main goal is to replace the algorithm which are quantum risk and reject those algorithms, that is a huge backward incompatible change for OpenStack. It can break a lot of things because quantum thing is there, but not everything is quantum, right? So that is the one question. And the second is about the support. It's not about just OpenStack keep supporting those, say, large key, and we can declare that support. For example, in case of Noah, if you want to inject a large key in the VM, you still need a open SSH support for that, and how they are placing that key in the VM. Otherwise, it won't work. Just Noah say that, okay, we can store that large key in DB, we can just inject in the VM, but we still need, the agent or OpenSSH who is placing that key in VM to be supported. Currently in OpenSSH, there is no support for those MLDSA key. There is an experimental version, but still that is not pending. So how my second question is how our dependencies are going and what's our plan if we want to support this.
Yeah, so the first thing is it's not a question of forcing everybody to move. It's just to add the right cryptographic module so that you can select them. Ideally, if you are making a new deployment, then there should be the default. But if you want something else, you should be able to use something else. I think that the risk analysis and the way the platform is configured belongs to the platform owner. So it's not a question of forcing everybody to use, I would say, traditional cryptography. So I really want to have options in what you want to do. Regarding algorithm that would not be present, is that OpenSSL? So OpenSSL 3.5, I think, has support for that algorithm. So if you're consuming from that, then you will be good, which is what we want to use at Red Hat. Python cryptography, hooking up into OpenSSL, and we're going to use 3.5 something at the point. So for me, the question is really, if someone wants to raise the bar, can they? If someone doesn't want to raise the bar, can they? And they should. It really belongs. And again, like a lot of things. If you look by default, for example, with TLS 1.3, when you're using TLS handshake, then today the highest key encapsulation that is going to be negotiated is going to be the hybrid MLChem, because that is considered to be the most secure. So if you don't restrict anything, and your server and your client support TLS 1.3 and they support the hybrid, then this is what's going to happen. It's going to be transparent. If your client doesn't support it and your server is willing to go to TLS 1.2, you're going to have a TLS 1.2 handshake. If your server is willing to go to TLS 1.1, you're going to have a TLS 1.1 handshake. That's on you. But the server has to offer those quantum algorithms. So that's my vision of how we should approach it. You have the flexibility to configure what you want. We're not forcing anybody.
Okay, Doug?
Say, I think it would be useful if part of the effort you created some attack tree explanations for users to know when to opt in into different things. Like, for example, if the APIs didn't use a cryptographic safe or quantum safe thing, then the traffic to the APIs are impacted. If Barbican didn't use that, then your keys, like just some like different pieces, because kind of like we were talking about Paramico and NetMiko behind the scenes. Hardware is old hardware and whatnot. Even hardware that's brand new today is going to be locked in at stuff, and we can't necessarily replace that hardware until the shareholders are appeased. Right, so that's all. So that way with the attack trees and different stuff like that, people have it's more approachable as to like what does this mean? Where can I do things? Right, versus like we must replace all the algorithms.
Yeah, I mean, I should probably frame it that we must add those algorithms. Then the fact that you want to configure them and use them by default is again, and for people operating critical infrastructure on OpenStack, they will hear from their regulator. I'm not worried. I'm French. I know about ANSI. I work with them. They can be demanding. So, and for me, now is the time to have the discussion before we are forced by regulation and it becomes kind of a fire. Because then, oh my God, your platform has to meet such power by this date, and what happens? So, again, the slow introduction of the fact that quantum safe algorithms become available and are added to all the projects, then that's the way to do it. So hopefully, when the regulation comes and forces us to have it, then we have the knobs to turn. That you don't want to turn it, or that you're not obliged to turn it, that's good. But if you have to turn it, at least you will be able to turn it. again, I'm not here to force anybody, but I think we must enable those algorithms. That's the difference for me, not enforcing them, enabling them.
Makes sense. And my question is not technical; it's more about the process over here. So, if Julia do you have a question about that? Sorry.
No, it's more a comment, but by all means.
Oh, okay. Go ahead then. I'll come after you.
Okay. So this kind of goes to the side chat conversation as well as sidebar. We can talk about servers and services all day long, but we have cross-service communication. Puppy. Sorry. One of the things I've been doing is, as a reasonable middle ground to advance things forward while we wait for better crypto to land in Python, is to start putting in knobs for TLS 1.2 or 3 or even permit 1.1 on the client side, so that an operator can say, by policy, I'm doing at least 1.2, and then they can eventually move that. Or by policy for my service communication, I'm going to do 1.3. But for that hardware off in the corner, yeah, I'm doing 1.1, and maybe eventually I'll have some additional controls elsewhere. But start presenting those options for that interaction. And so I think that's a really solid thing the community can do, is to go start presenting consistent knobs through services. And I've kind of been framing it as like TLS_ciphers, to just take a cipher list for preferred ciphers to be used, to be negotiated, and then also TLS version. That seems pretty reasonable, at least to help move us forward. Granted, services might have other things. We might do some token generation here and there, and that's fine. We should advance those items forward, and those should be highlighted. But I think, this goes back to my frustration. We really need to highlight what are the things we need to be doing. There are small, concrete steps to get to a better place overall.
Yeah. I'll switch tacks a little bit. So I just wanted to kind of contrast something that had happened before in this community with the FIPS testing. And express a little bit of the TC frustration around that. It was very, very hard for us to see that there were failing test jobs and things just falling off the thing. This is not on individuals. It was certainly the way the goal progressed. It kind of just died, and that was very hard to kind of peel back as well, because we didn't even have a mechanism as a TC to take a goal and say, okay, we don't care about this anymore because this is hurting us more than it helped us. And that is some concern that we're sharing for this effort as well as anything that comes in as a goal, which is kind of where I think you got the pushback when I think the first proposal was, can we have a cross community goal, because which is where we were coming from was, can you probably form a team, a group of people that want to actually give us these concrete things and define what this goal is supposed to be, and then let the community accept it, because what will happen is you'll leave the community holding a bunch of things that are broken that we have to end up maintaining for perpetuity, or take really hard decisions after. So the people that are doing the work are not the people that are cleaning up, is what I'm saying. So I think Jay had his hand up, and he's got a VMT concern on the thing. So I think it's around the same lines. But Jay,
you segued to me pretty well, perfectly. I was actually going to mention FIPS here, because for a similar reason of that, like both this and FIPS have kind of been brought to the community with a regulators say we've got to do it. So unless we want to lose like giant customers in this regulatory area, we need to take action immediately. But yet there are regulations that say that you've got to evaluate and resolve security vulnerabilities in a reasonable amount of time, and we've not seen a massive jump and push to populate those teams up. And I do want to call out Gotham as someone who's been contributing significantly to VMT. Rosemata has been in place as a backup for a while, so like it's not like there's no representation, but it kind of hurts when you're a member of the security vulnerability team. You're drowning in work to the degree that I've told my bosses that I'm probably not focusing on much ironic next cycle. I'm having to ship mostly to security as a company that our primary interest in OpenStack is deploying ironic. And so it's a little bit frustrating to have these big pushes for FIPS or for PQC and then look at like the low level, boring, ongoing work not getting as much investment as these shiny things. And so it kind of almost goes beyond like engage with the community properly for these projects. It's like, I would like to live in a world where these things bubble up through the security SIG, where the conversations are happening in the VMT chat among people worried about where the next vulnerability is going to come from. Because from our perspective, this isn't on the security radar at all in terms of things that we care about on a doable timeline. And then it sort of just gets dropped in onto the TC's agenda without a lot of other fanfare. And to Julia's credit, I think I kind of pushed her in the ironic community to shape it more the way she shaped it, to be a feature for people to control TLS instead of strictly focused on the regulatory thing, which makes it an intersection with a feature that we've had people ask for. So like, I'm not necessarily salty about doing the work per se, but like, what do I need to do as a member of the VNT, as co-security SIG chair, to get this level of excited regulatory involvement in the boring everyday stuff?
Julia?
So I cannot speak for Red Hat. In a sense, in this conversation, JP is the one that needs to be hearing a lot of this. And I can take an action item to try and separately drive discussion and conversation. But I think right now, the way Red Hat structures teams and security responsibility in areas aligns completely differently from upstream. And I think that creates a friction. And I think that is actually what we're hitting here. Because I think it's viewed as an engineering problem, not an engineering engagement. And we need to be having those conversations and engaging instead of focusing on the problem and the big picture of the problem. Let's decompose the problem. Let's discuss the problem. Let's work to a better place together. But because of the different shape of engagement, it has high friction, and we need to get to a point where it's lower friction. And the only way we do that is through correcting engagement.
So on the engagement thing, my expectation here is this is a conversation we're having with the TC and as community leaders about a thing that we might need to eventually do, but we're not going to mandate this as a community goal that each team must prioritize this over event-let removal or the other things that are critical to having a functioning project, right? If a vendor wants to contribute to it, they are free to contribute to progressing this goal, and we should ideally not stand in the way, but we're not going to say Glance must do X to get this done because instead of leaving the Glance team make that priority decision, right?
For me, it's even like a tiny bit deeper than that, right? I want to start the conversations with stakeholders like JP here, and I know you're probably the black hole for some of this, even though it's probably not your fault. So like, we recognize that we represent organizations. It's never an individual personal thing, but like, from a certain perspective, we've got to be, I forgot what I was going to say. It lost me. But I would like, part of the thing that hurts is that I want us to start the conversation of what do we need to do? What are the top 5 things we could do to make OpenStack more secure tomorrow? And we don't have those conversations. But we have conversations about digging 3 levels deep to this will make things more secure. So like, I think that's kind of what I'm looking for, is like a reorientation of the discussion to have actual conversations about what security priorities are most important in the project. Whereas today, a lot of times it is done on a spot by spot, a feature by feature level, so to speak, with stuff like this, which gets a little bit frustrating as someone who's kind of on the hamster wheel of the constantly moving, try to keep OpenStack a little bit more secure work and outside of the project-based security work.
All right, JB, I can give you a couple of minutes, but after that, any further feedback we'll have to take on the Etherpad, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
the PQC pop-up team proposal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. The problem is that security problem we had in the past, we're having today, we're going to have tomorrow, and that we enable quantum safe algorithm is not going to change that. Like they say, don't lose the forest for the tree. Um, the difference with FIPS, it's not a question of, oh my God, this is going to open, public sector, maybe regulation and so on. PQC is going to hit everything. The day a regulation is going to pass, it's going to be all systems. We'll start with critical system. It will not just be OpenStack. I'm working on the Kubernetes side of things. So if you want to start with something small, then you have a TLS server. Can you make sure that it is offering properly the hybrid MLChem when you do key encapsulation? Is your TLS client also supporting MLChem? So at least whenever we're doing TLS handshake and TLS protected communication, then those communication resist to what is considered now the most at risk, I would say, from a quantum computer point of view, which is traffic being stored now, sensitive traffic being stored because storage is cheap, that could be decrypted 4 years from now. I would bet that from a regulatory point of view, by 2030, there will be actual hard mandate that if you are not, providing quantum safe cryptography, your product will probably need to provide a way out of the product at some point. And, we're in 2026. And so I don't disagree with you, Jay. How can we make a better security in OpenStack? And what I'm saying, like the low-hanging fruit, is do you support hybrid quantum safe cryptography in TLS? Is something that can be looked at in any project and added. Again, I'm not asking stop the press and do it now because it's urgent. I'm saying now is the time to work on it so we're ready by 2028 or 2029. But if we don't start working on it, we will be ready by 2028 and 2029. That's my worry, that we're not ready. And which is why I want to have the conversation, and anybody willing to work and do anything to make that progress, for me, is a good thing. I'm not asking that stop everybody, everything. This is the highest priority. It has to be done in the next 6 months. But can it be slow progress like we do upstream development for big features, and having that overview from the pop-up team with the help of the TCs, that we have that, okay, what the first goal? Okay, we're going to secure TLS communication. Okay, what's needed in each project to do that. I wish I would start somewhere. I would start with that one. Let's secure TLS communications, TLS handshakes.
So just one very quick minor comment. Most of that is not in the scope of the project. So that's in Apache, it's in RabbitMQ, it's in OVS, not in any of the OpenStack projects that the TC has governance over, right? Because we don't actually provide web servers that are actually doing the hosting of this. We run our applications inside them in almost all of the cases. So unless our dependencies support those algorithms, there is actually nothing that Nova API can do to secure the TLS that's used to talk to the Nova API, because that's done by Apache. So we need to be very clear about like what's actually actionable by the community in the projects we maintain and where it needs to be addressed in the ecosystem.
Yeah, that I think is a good way to round it up, because we go back to the first concern that we probably want the concrete items listed out, and that's a good task for the PQC pop-up team that's being proposed and so on. So thank you for bringing this discussion. We are 10 minutes over. So sorry about that. Let's switch over to the next topic, if that's fine, and we will, wrap that up. Okay. So the next topic is a couple of things that I was involved with, and so I can speak to them. But feel free to interrupt me and raise your hand and speak as well. So one of the things was the TC vision documents. So it was pointed out that this was old, and it's quite old. There's a lot of old information in there, which is nice for archival purposes, but there is the way we do the way we build our clouds, what we are aspiring today is not the same as what we did. So maybe a lot of the vision was fulfilled, and so we have to probably put down in words what it is that OpenStack seeks to do in today's world and beyond. and so there were some things that I had identified around the vision, the goals, structures, and the programming languages that we support, the PTIs that we write, and so on. So it's all part of the process that the TC does today and influences the community. And I just wanted to get started on improving these so that we can match what is there today. And the reason is because we've started getting a lot of questions, and when we get these questions, they come on the mailing list, they come on IRC channels, they create a lot of space for discussion, which is great, but they also create some disagreements where we go back to the very basic thing, saying no, this is not allowed, because we've enshrined this in the documentation out here, and so on, and that probably dissuades contributors and creates disappointments, which is not what the intent of those documents in the first place was. It feels like the documents had to evolve. We just did not get around to evolving those in a timely manner. So if that's a good starting point, I will just pause because Clark was putting his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention, because I think some of the discussions I had kind of led to this. And yeah, I think what we've seen in the community is a desire to kind of evolve. And that becomes difficult when there's what are perceived as static policies and rules in place that would prevent evolving in a direction that people are interested in, right? And so I think having that high level vision, the goals, this is who we are, or however we want to frame it, is important, so that we can then acclimate to this desire to evolution, and in the process update our policies, right? It's the goal isn't necessarily to write all of the software in Python. The goal is to write cloud software that functions together and all this. Python is an implementation detail, right? If evolution says that we need to move beyond Python or whatever, it's not just Python, there's been other things. But I think having this sort of vision of what we're trying to accomplish is crucial to being able to decide the rules around how we do it and whether or not they need to change.
So I'll jump in, 'cause I think I'm next. But in regards to vision should always change and evolve. And I know there are some varying schools of thought regarding visions, like it should be the concrete thing right in front of you versus it should be something 2 to 3 years down the road. And the TC vision that is in the repo is the 2 to 3 years down the road standpoint, and it's meant to be very aspirational. That doesn't mean that it has to live forever. It's actually a good process to, on a regular basis, rewrite your vision or to have a new vision. And to that end, I think basically what Clark was saying, it's okay to change. It's okay to evolve. We shouldn't hold ourselves back in a static period of time.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like, getting in the normal business of things, it's easy for us to just forget that this is a thing that we should continue to improve. The TC also does other things like break up a lot of those and take resolutions and so on. And project teams have a huge amount of independence by design to advance things. But I think contentious points, such as when we start writing down very very strict rules and PTIs, then we kind of prevent from project teams from making progress too. And so I think right now the need would be to go improve these parts. So starting with the vision, I feel like this could be parallelized. So we take a look at the vision, break it up, and make progress. And and my proposal is going to be, we'll throw up a bunch of patches and let people discuss and disagree, and come to an agreement, and then put things back together into the vision document, and probably time box these discussions and disagreements in some way that we don't really keep things this thing. And I can take ownership for that. Like, I don't want to leave some things going for 6 months. I'm going to make all the noise about it to gather voices, but I don't want an inordinate amount of time before we come up with, taking down what people consider today as outdated or misinformation out there. Yeah, Julio.
I was just gonna ask, have you done any sort of visioning training? Because it sounds like you
I have
have,
not.
based upon.
I have
Okay,
not, and I'm reading
I-
a lot of the content and thinking, okay, this is a good framework, and I think Jeremy was telling us that the TC actually did this in the past, but that's
oh
that's a good
yes,
point.
yes.
Go ahead, tell me.
So what I will take an action item since I was in the training session we did back in 2018, as I will send you some links to some videos, just so that you can kind of at least have an understanding of the mental concept and model of interaction that we had back then. But it sounds like you're heading in the right direction, really. Everything you're saying is scatter, gather, collect the basic ideas, and I maybe personally wouldn't go to the point of getting people to propose patches for the idea gathering, but at least kind of scatter, gather, collect back, and try and build themes out of that, because you're always going to kind of have people heading in different directions. And I will also as a follow-on thought, wild and crazy is good. Aspirational is good. Just putting that out there.
Makes sense. That would be super helpful. And I can distill that if in case it's not in a shareable format for the rest of the community to take on as well. Yeah, I did use some of Clark's framing from an old post to the mailing list, but I don't know if I misquoted you, Clark. So feel free to add comments there. Basically, his questions were around what is it that OpenStack needs to care about, with the project scope boundary question that we've always had, and then the PTI specific questions today. So I'll pause there, Jay.
Yeah, so from a certain point of view, I kind of wonder if we need to, zoom out on this a little bit, even beyond OpenStack, right? Like, one thing that I've seen as I've talked to users of OpenStack, my downstream does this. Lots and lots of ironic users do this for sure, of using OpenStack and Kubernetes, or at least some portions of the CNCF ecosystem and OpenStack together, to the point where, like, if you talk to someone who's deploying OpenStack today, unless they're directly trying to like one-for-one replace VMware or something, it's rare that they don't have Kubernetes in that stack somewhere as well. So part of what I wonder is if a vision that's just OpenStack centric or just looks at OpenStack is going to really be valuable versus something that maybe takes a bigger look at the ecosystem, right? Because like, I like OpenStack. I've worked on OpenStack a long time, but it's hard for me to see in 5 or 10 years an OpenStack that's completely independent without needing or wanting to integrate pieces from otherwhere, right? Like, not saying that we're going to die or anything like that, just that I think that the opportunities for cooperation are so many that we're going to need to blur these lines as time goes on. And this seems like a really good opportunity to do it in a semi-official way.
Agreed. And I think I had something like that around, when we're thinking about the scope boundary itself, it is around everything else that we interact with as well, and as their own evolution, which is, you mentioned Kubernetes, other CNCF projects, other Linux Foundation projects that we're so entwined with. And other OIF projects and so on. So it is probably worth thinking through that, and also having a mention of that. Yeah, Clark.
I was just say, I think too with the vision, the vision should be less about, we're going to use Kubernetes, we're going to use Python, we're going to, and I don't think the old vision did that. I think really what you're trying to accomplish within the vision is asserting why you exist, not the why and the but less the how, and then that becomes implementation details. So I think there's space to kind of support what Jay is saying, but I think that's kind of maybe more derivative of the top level. The vision might say something like, we're not going to reinvent wheels that have well supported and accepted solutions in open source software or whatever. And that would mean, well, don't go and reinvent Kubernetes or don't go and reinvent Ceph. But that then informs policies where we would say things like, we say we only support open source things at a minimum, or that's the wrong way of expressing it. We're not going to add features to OpenStack if you can't accomplish that with an open source project and you need closed things, right? Like the drivers that we have, we expect to be supported with open source implementations and things like that. And then that's where you might say, well, like Kubernetes fits in. And so, yeah, I think with the vision, I think it's important to kind of point in a direction of what we want to accomplish, but not how. And then we derive those details from there. And that was kind of, this thinking is, I think, where it fit into the earlier discussion and the mailing list thread that I started, where, because we're doing the work every day, it's really hard sometimes to take that step back and think about the big picture. It's just, Rust is going to fix this problem for me today, or, PyTest fixed this problem for me today. I don't care what the rules are. And so we never take that step back and decide, do the rules make sense anymore? We just kind of blaze ahead. And so creating that loop and making it an accepted practice, because I think some of the problem here is that people feel that those rules cannot be changed. They're like golden and forever. And so just kind of normalizing the idea that OpenStack isn't static, it can evolve, and drive that evolution from a vision statement is maybe like an important starting point.
Yeah, Sean.
Not to dig down on that too much, but like the only issue I've ever had with the idea of adding Rust on a language is that it hasn't followed the process for adding the other language. If you went to it and did the proposal for the new language, went through the process that was added after Go was added, and actually had that conversation and we said yes, then I would be totally fine with it. Pulling a whatever language makes sense for the problem you're trying to solve, right? But if you are using it, but we explicitly say we have a process for adding it, and you then choose not to follow that process, then that's why it leaves slightly a worse taste in my mouth in terms of like, I would like to see this effort go forward, but we have a way of evolving it and we're sidestepping that way of evolving it. So like +1 for encouraging the evolution of our processes rather than sidestepping them and ignoring them.
Just to jump in here, since I didn't see him with their hand raised, but I know in the past, especially when PTs were in person, we would kind of have these discussions. And I think with the pandemic that happened, a lot of the brakes got hit on doing that because we went to completely virtual. We stopped having those sorts of discussions. And having them now is great, and evolving the state and where we want to be is also great. And really now is a great time. There's never not a good time to have these discussions because you're ultimately working level setting people's context together. So I think it's actually good, and I really encourage the overall effort. How much is gathered? Who knows? How much people respond? Who knows? But the key is evolve, move forward. I mean, if I could say any one thing to anyone, it'd be keep your mind open and look for where the possibilities can be.
Agreed. I think that's good. I like the agreement that we're coming to. So I don't think I had concrete next steps written out here, but I will follow up in the the TC discussions and the OpenStack Discuss mailing list. And if folks want to talk to me, feel free to ping me on the TC channel around this. I did want to talk about the next thing, but probably keep it brief, given that I think we scheduled an open discussion for the last 20 minutes. I do want to keep some space for that. The next thing was something that's again something that it has come up here in this PTG as well as in the past PTGs, that we used to have a we used to have a structured contributor experience sort of a place people that could go find out how they can contribute. There was a contributor advocacy around that effort, but it kind of slowed down, died, and then probably project teams are doing it in different ways and so on. I was just going to try and propose it again, and the reason we do this, we have to do this now again, is because I feel like we are seeing new contributors every now and then we kind of are still directionless. We kind of point people to a document and say, let's start there. There's a lot of effort that they do put in, and we do see success at the end of it, but there could be a lot more if it was back to the old structured way, where a bunch of us would probably try to be helpful, and evolve this process, right? And I'm just hand waving a bunch of different things, but it ties back to something that that bothered me about how we recognize contributions, and that's why I thought this working group probably is a solution or a mechanism to evolve that. First, we in the TC we have a concept of extra contributors, extra ACs, and so we've given people a way to propose that and then get credits for it, right? So, and this credits would be, people get summit passes in the past. That's no longer a thing, but you get added to the electorate. You get to participate in the thing, even if you're not a code contributor. And there was no major objection to that, except it's never been used. It's been around for a long time. People probably don't know about the process, or they think it's too cumbersome. So there's too much friction there to try and use this. So I kind of wanted to take a dent and see whether we can change that, first by trying to find a bunch of like-minded people, floating a group, talking through it, make a recommendation to the TC, and get that rolling. And there will be lots more like that, the theme around that. So I just wanted to keep a space where people can gather and talk through contribution pains. Julia.
Did I may have misheard you, but I think you just flat out said extra ACs have never been used.
They have been used. I actually pulled up the numbers. There have been 14 proposals for extra
Yes.
ACs in like a decade, and
Yes,
mostly
the-
used by one SIG, which does a couple of additions every now and then. So no
Yep.
project teams have ever proposed extra ACs.
I don't believe that's correct.
Really? I didn't find anything on Get It.
I think Jay has actually done it.
Oh,
Yeah, I remember there were a few
I-
from
maybe I
Ironically
didn't go
Fast.
far.
I'm
far
not
enough.
tuned into the conversation. What did I do? It either was or
broke
wasn't
the-
me, depending on if it was good.
Proposing folks as contributors through the extra flag.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I did it more with a downstream hat on than an upstream hat on. I had a guy on my team who's been working on SDK stuff on the Go side, who was working on Ironic on the outskirts, and I want him to get the recognition of being on the list. I'm not even sure he voted. Even it was just that's the thing that I think I care about a little bit more than others do. I just if I've got someone who's younger on my team starting out their career, I want to make sure that they get the proper credit there. I'll be honest, I'm not sure they cared at all, but I cared and I set it up for them. So it can get done, but having the right to vote doesn't really matter when we barely have candidates to make the votes interesting.
Agreed. And Amy.
Okay. I think this system was most active when Tom Fifield was around, and he would go to each of our working groups and SIGs and say, do you have anybody? And those would then get added. So, because we're going back to Women of OpenStack days. There were a lot of active people within the group who deserved to have status, but at the same time, they didn't contribute code. So and even I sometimes fall into it because we found that a lot of the repos I was contributing to weren't falling under the TC or any projects. I think we've caught that up, so people like me don't get caught in the gap. But yeah, there are people who are very active in the community and who may not make those code contributions, but I don't think we have as good of a method of reminding people to submit them and submit them on time. Or maybe the word just isn't out there as much as a notification, because, you know, if Tom came to us and said, hey, we're getting ready to put the list of contributors together, give me your list, we put the list together. But if no one's reminding us, we may not get the list together. And people who are newer may not even know about the list. And we went from used to have AUC and ATC, and now it's just AC. But people may not know about it anymore.
Yeah, I agree with both of your points. Basically, the point is that, I mean, what is this even? What does AC even mean? What can you do beyond that? Do you really have to care? So I guess part of it was try and make it more of a thing, right? Recognize the contribution, and highlight it, and kind of say that this is important to us, and that way you have more people doing it. And so that's why I want to bring that back as a vehicle. That's it. And the fact that it is so much friction, you probably surmise that, saying, so, somebody else has to come and remind you that they have to be do it, that you have to do it, etc. I mean, periodic reminders are fine, but it feels like there was a lot of pulling. So I feel that if you did this differently, you don't need to do that pulling. So that's where the thought process comes from. At the very this thing, I just wanted to break the friction over here, remove the whole mechanism from the TC. Very controversial. I know people on the TC are going to impeach me for this, but what I meant, like, I don't want that to be a TC concern. I feel like we can let project teams have their contributors recognize the way they want, and so that can actually go into their space, and let the maintainers themselves recognize people, and make it probably easier than submitting a code patch. Um, it could be an IRC automation, or some website where you go click some buttons, whatever, and not dilute the value of what this is, but actually use this to distribute the recognitions, rather than try to say the TC blesses anyone that is recognized as a contributor today. That said, there are implications towards elections, and I'm not saying we go, let all of these become part of the electorate or something like that. That's a part that definitely needs a deeper discussion. Julia.
Amy pointed out that, it's, I guess what Amy was pointing out was it's really easy to forget. And I guess what I would be hesitant of is creating more things, more processes that then still have to be remembered. And maybe the issue is, if we take a step back, it's maybe we've overcomplicated some of the processes and procedures to the point where other things are required, and maybe that's where maybe just a mental step back might be needed. I don't know. And it's a really hard aspect, because you want to have defined governance, you want to have a defined electorate, and you want to have recognition, but you don't. Anytime you have to have a process that's human driven to really stamp someone with recognition, we're actually heading in the wrong direction, I think. How to reconcile that, I don't know. I'm hesitant of anything that's a human driven process, because I think we're putting it on that path to be forgotten again. Even if we highlight it, even if we advertise it, even if we put it on a schedule, say, let's talk about this every 3 months or 6 months. It's still always going to be a thing that a human has to do, and we're all busy humans.
Yeah, Jay.
I guess I want to ask the question because based on my experience with my team, I cared way more about them being listed as an extra AC than they did. When I did stints as PTL of Ironic, there were a couple of times I reached out to people and asked them, and the conversation was 95% me explaining to them what the hell I was talking about, and 5% them going, sure. So I do not want to at any point be seen as like thinking that these people who donate things that are not commits to OpenStack are not contributors. They are. It's extremely valuable, but I want to make sure that we're not churning up a lot of stuff just because, you know, like how many actual humans are there that deserve to be extra AC and care that they get extra AC? And is that number more than what I can count on one hand? So if it can be counted on one hand, then like someone set up an every 6 months reminder to add them to the list, and let's talk about bigger issues.
To my point, it's that whole having to remember to do a thing, and even if you have a reminder, you're still not necessarily going to remember. Who knows? You might come. It might be that calendar item might land on Monday, and you get into like the world's on fire, but that calendar item doesn't pop up on Tuesday, so now it's gone.
Yeah, totally. And and yeah, I did think of the thing of yeah, we'll be patting each other's backs a lot because you know the community is not as big as it was in 2016 or something like that. So it will probably come down to that. But my hope was that we'll start seeing more and more people, and we've discussed a lot about tools and things like that that make things easier for people to come in. And yeah, this is going to be a continuation on that aspect. Another thing that I wanted to try to use this sort of effort was let teams get used to recognizing work that matters to the community, and it's the toil, and those probably will be code patches. I agree. So they'll get their recognition in a different way. But I want people to say, I mean, like for example, I would like as the PTL of a project to say, you know, all these new features aside, what really mattered to my team was we reduced the amount of time that CI runs were taking. We fixed these perma failing jobs because somebody spent the time to do that. And you know, we caught this huge bug that was, you know, preventing a bunch of people from using our product, period, whatever. Like there's work that happens that we know is way more meaningful collectively than it is to satisfy, you know, a particular use case or a feature kind of thing, that often gets celebrated very I mean, and rightfully so, right? Like there are highlights that people care about, CIOs, etc., and they just want to platform this sort of views as well, and wanted to drive that sort of discussion as well through this. So the ulterior motive is people feel like doing this. People tell their employers, "Hey, look, I did something, and this community recognized me for this, so allow me to do more of it." I don't know, that sort of thing. You can call it pipe dreams.
I think the fundamental issue is that the community is has long solely recognized contribution as just code, with the exception of someone nominating, and it should be way more inclusive on the front end. How to get to that point, I don't know right now. I'm at end of week, no brain left, state and time.
Thanks, Jeremy.
I will say that the decision to count code contributions as the basis of the electorate was primarily from a pragmatic standpoint. It's something that we have a record of and can measure, and that gives us a way of deterministically identifying who the voters, the constituents for the technical committee are. That's not to say that there couldn't be other qualifications to be part of the electorate, but what automated means do we have for identifying those individuals? And that's the reason why we've fallen back on manually submitting lists of additional people who qualify as part of the electorate, because we haven't had other options for automated means of identifying them.
It's a challenge because, in a sense, it's also decentralized. You know, for example, we've got Matrix, we have IRC, we have mailing lists. Like, maybe mailing lists gets you a lot closer because you can start associating a name and an email address through that. But at the same time, you know, IRC, you have to know someone's handle, and I've probably had at least half a dozen. Do you know this person by his IRC handle messages this week alone?
Clark.
I mean, I think, isn't there also a little bit of a question of like, should there, or is there a threshold of the thing that counts as you being within the electorate? I know, you know, electioneering has been a concern at times historically. I think it's reasonable to say that, like, you don't necessarily get to vote just because you sent an email to the mailing list, but maybe if you helped someone on the mailing list, right? There's a lot more nuance there, I think, than just like aggregate all the data and if you show up somewhere, then you can vote, is I think what I'm trying to say.
No, I do agree with you to an extent, but also we are way past the peak hype of community, I guess is the way to put it. And you can kind of see that there are other communities that got a lot more traction than us that still have to deal with some of those issues. And I don't feel like we necessarily have the same class of issues, but maybe maybe there's an analysis that could be done or some data point. It's just, I don't feel like we have the same class of electioneering concerns we did 10 years ago. It just feels like an entirely different community now. Not to say that you're not raising a valid point. It's just we should recalibrate our threshold and perception.
Makes sense. All right. Won't take any action items or agreements on this particular topic. We can take it to the TC meetings, and if any proposal onto Gerrit itself. Did want to spare some time for the open discussion. I see a bunch of topics being added over there. Does anybody want to grab the mic?
For open discussion, I can bring forward the security.md thing. It's pretty minor, but it's something that I thought but was brought up at the ironic level. I decided to pull it up to the TC level because it impacts everyone. If you navigate to the security tab for any of our projects in GitHub right now, it tells you we don't have a security policy and invites people to PR one to us because, you know, that's a great first contribution as a security policy. I don't love it, but it looks like the only way to prevent that message from being up there is to have a security.md, specifically MD. There are examples I've found of RST not working in there. I would propose that we would put a security.md file in the root of all OpenStack repos that simply contains a line to the effect of OpenStack has a vulnerability management process defined at URL. Please read it, or something like that. Just literally put in just an external link, and as long as we keep that link alive, we'll never need to touch it again. I will pull out that Doug and Sean both said there's an alternate solution to this. I don't like it, but I'm going to give voice to it just so we can avoid the back and forth that's already happened in Etherpad. We could alternatively publish a .github repo under the OpenStack organization that contained a security.md that applied to all projects. I prefer putting a security.md in every repo simply because that is a generic thing that is useful to everyone. And I feel a little bit less like I've been bullied by GitHub into putting kind of BS documentation on something. But I can understand if we want to take the other route. My bigger concern is just stop telling people the wrong thing, please, GitHub.
So I mean I hear you. I'm gonna the counterpoint there. That .github repo is used for more than just like a default security.md. There's a whole lot of other stuff in there, and the only reason I'm floating it out there is this is probably not going to be the first thing that they're going to start doing, and it's probably not going to be the last thing. And if we have some base default thing that gets proxied over to that, that would be the thing for that.
Okay, you're winning me over a little bit with that.
like if you go to like github.com/openstack, for example, there's like certain files that you can put into there that change what appears on your default thing, and we could have a file in there that says like this is a mirror of OpenStack. We don't accept pull requests here. Here's a link to our documentation, right? Like something like that is for a contributor that is a GitHub first contributor, that would give them a link out to our documentation. So that's why I suggested it was for the bigger community engagement.
No, you win. I'm sold. Easy. I come in swinging because it's easier to have an opinion and argue about it than it is to, well, I don't know. So your argument makes a lot of sense to me. I'm here for it. My only question then becomes a infrastructural one of like, I'm assuming we don't want to create that repo in GitHub. I'm assuming we want to like proxy it over or something. So is there a way we could create a config that maybe on the OpenDev side would be GitHub config, but it would mirror over to like .github or somewhere else? Because I really don't want to have a .github repo in OpenDev, OpenStack, if we can help it.
Yeah, one thing about that is Git might start interpreting that repository. They try to have weird compatibility things with GitHub. I don't know that it does, but that if we do put it in Garrett and Git, checking that we aren't going to do unexpected things to Git would be a good idea first.
Git?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why the idea is to call the repo like GitHub org or whatever, and have it sunk to the .github there.
Right. I'm saying that if that's a convention that GitHub uses, Git is also very commonly using GitHub conventions. So I'm just saying, just double check that you're not going to unexpectedly affect both of them in the process.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think like we nodded to, if we're able to give it like a completely different repo name and using the independent repo to do it, I think we'll be able to dodge a lot of that. The only thing that worries me is we'll just have to make sure that the first time we hook up that proxying, that we have someone there who has some kind of rollback ability on that, because that's really the biggest problem. Is more if we kick it off, kick it out, it's just there, right? Like, so we'll have to be careful about a rollout for it. But I am happy to take an action to explore this, with the caveat that it's probably not going to happen for weeks, but I'll take it on and eventually.
So my very related topic to this is, We now actually have the ability to turn off PRs in our repos. We discussed this a little bit on the info channel a while ago. Has there been any movement on actually doing that, or?
Let me take that as part of my action, because I'll see how much of that we can bake into that GitHub config repo. I actually think, I know at a minimum you can do pull request bodies in there. So we could put a pull request body in that like says, hey, thanks for trying to contribute. This is not the way to do it. Go over there, even if we can't turn them off.
No, but you can now actually turn them off in GitHub. They added that like a couple of months ago, so we can stop anyone from even trying to do it if you want to.
There is the reason I care about whether or not you can turn it on or off in the repo is that's the difference between pushing a repo once and making a change, or someone having to navigate through the settings of like 200 GitHub repos. And I don't want the access to do that, much less actually having to do it. Fun guy or Gibby?
Yeah, that brings up I guess one important historical note, which is some years back we had a group of volunteers from the TC who were taking care of curating the OpenStack org on GitHub. I don't know if that task and responsibility has been passed down to their successors on the TC, but you may want to talk about reviving that activity if it's something that the TC is regaining interest in.
I'm not aware of it, but I'm wondering if it was related to the whole TC badges effort as well, because there was something to make things look better on GitHub.
Yeah, I mean, things like the pinned repositories and some of the org description stuff was being handled manually by Doug and some other people on the TC at the time.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if Doug still has that access, Doug Hillman, and that it was not passed along.
Yeah. Doug.
So, yeah, like the pinned repositories and stuff like that is now configurable through a file rather than like human click, and it's in that GitHub repo. The other files, I just looked it up, the like security.md, the other files that they have that they that you can put in there that map to all the other projects are codeofconduct.md, contributing.md, security.md, support.md, governance.md, and then funding.yaml is there. Those are the org wide that map to all the repos, and then you can create a profile with a readme.md in there, and that can be your main page, and then you can create a file that's specifying your pinned repos.
Yeah,
I'm just reading through their docs.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I think a day of effort on my part plus a little bit of code review could probably just be a big facelift over there. It's the cost of value, it's astronomically in favor of value.
Yeah, so that I was speaking of the pull requests. I'm speaking from the standpoint of new contributors that are new to OpenDev and whatnot that might have some exposure to GitHub. Makes that easier. I was actually going to pitch out a thing that I've been hacking together for a GitHub action that could live inside of that repo that could catch all pull requests on all the child pull requests and reply back to the user, kind of thing like, hey, thanks for your contribution, but here's a link to this project's contributing guide and such.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting to like implementation detail weeds here. Like, I'll take the action of trying to get repos lined up, and then I'll make sure, since you have a lot of care about it, I appreciate you volunteering your time through your attention and concern that we do this right. It's so nice of you, Doug. We'll work on it together and we'll get it figured out, because I'll need someone who's willing to be a code reviewer on that repo. So I appreciate it, and and we'll take care of it. I set a reminder for about 2 weeks out because I figure by then I'll be recovered from the PTG. So, put it on the shelf for a little bit if we want to move on to some other open discussion topic now.
Yeah, is there any?
There's the Python 3.14 testing thing.
I don't know if Cyril's here. Anybody else that had that concern?
I didn't add the
Oh.
topic, so it was there and mentioned how you do it. Apparently, there are different ways of doing it. I just have a simple container where I basically run all the unit tests for tons of projects. That's enough to find some issues in OpenStack ahead of time, and sometimes it uncovers the regressions in CPython itself. So I do that usually with the release candidates around August or September. The idea is to make sure we're ready for the next version, but also to help CPython test their release candidates, because they usually ask for people to test, and there's not really many people doing it. So I think it helps both projects. Yeah, I still have a few patches for 3.14 that are under review. And that's it. I didn't propose the topic myself, so I'm not sure exactly what the intent was. But okay, go on, Clark.
Yeah, I was just going to mention the talks jobs that are already defined in Zool have pyenv support, and you can tell it like use pyenv and install this version of Python, and then you tell it to run the talks target like -e 315 or whatever, right? So I think theoretically you could run the 315 alphas today through that, assuming talks will work with it, because it does rely on that setup relies on the tooling itself being able to use that version of Python too, I think. So that's kind of an easy way of doing early look ahead Python support testing. And then the other, I think the bigger question is, when does OpenStack want to require the new version of Python? And that's a whole PTI discussion. And but the infra team has been working on some Ubuntu Resolute test node stuff, which isn't quite there yet because of image building issues, but it's close. So yeah, I think from a tooling perspective, this is possible. Like there shouldn't be many big barriers here. But then the next question becomes, once you find those issues, as you say, new versions of Python, sometimes you find bugs in your software, maybe it's a bug in Python, someone has to work through those. And that's, I think, where most of the effort ends up needing to be.
Yeah, I think, Sean started a mail thread as well, and he proposed using UV for, DevStack-based testing. I guess we can, yeah, Sean, you got a minute.
That was so that was kind of two different things. I've been using UV a lot to just run unit tests in different versions of Python and use it locally for quite a while. And I was chatting with Stephen Finucane, who also does that. He was like, it would be cool if we do this in DevStack. And I've been putting this off for 6 months. So I happened to have done a POC of that last weekend. And then we had the conversation in the eventlet track. I'm like, I have a POC of this. I can just set 2 variables and we can run things at templates. So I'm not necessarily saying we should ever swap to using that as a default, or it may not even get into DevStack. That's a separate conversation to happen if we want to have that type of testing in it. But it was a very quick and easy way to use our existing CI infrastructure to do it. And in the past, I've actually tried to hack in the pyenv stuff in our DevStack jobs and had some success with that. But this felt like it was a little bit more reliable because I've had compilation issues and issues with like UV and stuff like that. But ClipNotes is, I have seen in this job that we have done a resize of a VM on a multi-attached volume that was booted to a one without it, and like attach ports and stuff in this job. And it's also shown that there's some things that break with eventlet, and we have now fixed them when in the threaded mode. So it's already like shed light on the conversation we're having around the pickle problem. So the second we turned off eventlet, the pickle issue we're having in the Nova VNC proxy went away. And I was able to very quickly just test that. So hopefully we'll have less fragility with going to new versions of the Python as we keep going down the event load removal goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I think we're over, and this is the end of it. Just wanted to thank folks for staying back for this long. There was a 3-hour session today, but you folks have probably been in meetings all 6 hours of or more every single day. So please do log off and take some time off. Thank you all for being here and participating.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks,
coordinating.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks for running it, Gotham. Thanks everyone for coming. This is like OpenStack of old levels of PTG participation, for better or worse, or smoking meatpad server.
It's because you keep turning your camera on.
Yeah, it wasn't smoking the server; it was smoking everybody's clients if they had their video streams all hitting their browser at the same time.
Hey, I didn't even hear a whir. I'm at a desktop here. I got